The Harris v. Trump debate is already looming as another historic pivot point in an extraordinary campaign. President Joe Biden had banked on June's presidential debate turning around a race that was slipping away from him. Now, Donald Trump may be laying a similar bet after reversing himself by agreeing to debate on ABC next month as his new Democratic opponent enjoys surging momentum. Trump clearly doesn't believe he'll suffer the kind of debacle that ended Biden's campaign, but his decision and call for another 2 debates on NBC and Fox, which Vice President Kamala Harris has not agreed to, tells an emerging truth about the election. After a barnstorming week for Harris and her new running mate, Minnesota Gov. Tim Walz, Trump suddenly looks like old news. A crushing new experience for an ex-president who prides himself on driving the narrative. The build-up to the debate on September 10, assuming it goes ahead, will be intense, and the truncated nature of the new campaign means it could create another historic pivot point on the dwindling road to the White House. Already, Trump is playing his idiosyncratic expectations game of denigrating the skills of his opponent, who could be the first Black woman and South Asian president. At a news conference at his Mar-a-Lago resort Thursday, he compared Harris unfavorably with Biden, who he'd long argued lacked the mental acuity to serve. She's actually not as smart as he is. I don't think he's very smart either, by the way. I'm not a big fan of his brain, Trump said. The clash also looms as an extreme test for Harris. The vice president has a mixed record in debates. She performed strongly in such events early in her failed 2020 presidential campaign, but at others she struggled, and her most unflattering moments in office have come when she's been asked to explain her positions or answer tough questions in major interviews. But as she grows in confidence as the Democratic nominee, Harris is a more accomplished politician than she was 4 years ago, and supporters are keen to see her leverage her skills as a former prosecutor to skewer the 4 times indicted former president. Harris jabbed Trump over his change of heart over the ABC debate and said she was happy to have a conversation about a second, later encounter. I'm glad that he's finally agreed to a debate on September 10. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope he shows up, she told reporters before boarding Air Force Two in Detroit. After Harris turned the campaign upside down in less than 3 weeks, Trump showed in his news conference that he's still grappling for an effective response. The ex-president appears to be grieving the contest against 81-year-old Biden and in denial about the early success of the energetic new Democratic ticket. Asked why he wasn't doing more to campaign and to counter the rollicking rollout of the Harris campaign, Trump argued, "I'm leading by a lot and I'm letting their convention go through." He insisted he hadn't recalibrated strategy at all as he made the same arguments that the U.S. is swamped by open borders and immigrant crime. But there's a growing feeling his campaign needs such a reboot. Harris has erased the ex-president's previous advantage over Biden with the race now neck and neck in the latest CNN poll of polls. A new Marquette Law School poll released Thursday morning found Harris leading 52% to Trump's 48% among registered voters nationally. Trump's problem is not that there are not solid arguments against Harris and her new running mate. Millions of Americans are hurting over high prices and are stalked by economic insecurity. The world is an increasingly dangerous place as American enemies team up to challenge Washington's power. And Harris is intimately linked to everything the unpopular Biden administration did in these areas. The new Democratic team hasn't offered concrete policies to tackle such issues, and the vice president is yet to submit to detailed questions from reporters or do a major television interview. And many Republicans and right-leaning independents are receptive to Trump's arguments over the southern border crisis, even if arrivals of undocumented migrants have eased since Biden tightened enforcement earlier this year. But Trump isn't making many of these points effectively as he stews over his personal grievances. His characteristically off-the-rails news conference at one point digressed into him comparing his and Martin Luther King Jr.'s crowd sizes. And the former president also seems to be laying a predicate to challenge another election if he loses, untruthfully insisting on Thursday that the Democratic Party's switch of nominees was unconstitutional. "We have a constitution. It's a very important document, and we live by it," Trump said, apparently oblivious to the irony of such comments coming from a former president who tried to steal the 2020 election and has threatened the fabric of U.S. democracy.